What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. For some time now I have been on the search for a vintage lens set to collect and build over time and eventually convert into a Cine modded lens set. After watching Media Division's Contax Ice video one day, hope you guys have seen that. If not, there's going to be a link here somewhere, go and watch it, it's amazing. I was all set for the Contax Ice lenses after watching their video. But as the prices have risen quite dramatically over the last year or two, I started looking for cheaper alternative lens sets to develop. Ended up stumbling across the Yashica Contax ML lenses. Dove a little deeper, it turns out a lot of these lenses are not so dissimilar from the Contax Zeiss lenses themselves, and there began my quest for a Yashica lens set. So first, a quick history lesson about the CY mount and Yashica's collaboration with Carl Zeiss and Porsche. Founded in Nagano in early December of 1949, Yashica Psyche company was founded with an initial investment of just 566 not Australian, American dollars. That's equivalent to 6,000 US dollars in today's terms. It's a very little initial input. The original 8 employees produced watch parts, I believe, and parts for electrical clocks. They later began to make camera equipment and components, and by June 1953 had introduced their first complete camera, the Yashica Flex. It was a twin lens reflex TLR medium format box camera thing. In 1957, Yashica founded Yashica Incorporated, a subsidiary arm based in New York City to manage marketing efforts in the United States. During the next year and a half, Yashica continued to grow with 1,982 total employees by 1958. Later in 58, Yashica changed the entire company's name to Yashica Company Limited. In the next 10 years, Yashica had risen to become, in terms of production and sales, the largest manufacturer of camera and exporter of photographic equipment in the whole of Japan. Later in 1972, a cooperative agreement was signed between Yashica, Carl Zeiss and Porsche to design a line of 35mm SLR film cameras under the name of Contax, with the general design and aesthetic coming from Porsche, and the lens design, of course, being in the capable hands of Zeiss themselves. This would go on to establish Yashica as a large and respected player in the Japanese domestic camera industry. In 1974, the first Contax SLR was released, the famous Contax RTS. With this, the CY or Contax Yashica mount was born. In 1975, Yashica adopted the CY mount for all of their own SLR cameras also. Later in 75, Yashica started production on their new DSB and ML line of Contax Yashica mount lenses. These are manufactured in Japan at Yashica's Tomioka, I think you pronounce it like this, Tomioka lens factory. DSB was a consumer range of lenses being single-coated, and the ML was of course the Pro line being multi-coated. In the same year, Zeiss released their highly acclaimed Super Speeds, a very fast, bright set of cinema lenses that are still sought after until this current day. And will also bring a tear to even the most highly paid DOP's eyes. They are very, very expensive. For the new Contax RTS and subsequent models, the top-of-the-line lenses were of course the Zeiss T-Star. T-Star denoted with the red T-Star on the front of the locking ring of the lens to mark Zeiss's proprietary lens coatings that were used in this line of lenses. To begin, most were produced in Germany at the time, but many were later manufactured under license in Japan at, you guessed it, Yashica's Tomioka lens production facility. It should be noted that the green 16 or 22, the highest aperture value on the lens, marking is inherent in green to AE. Wait, I got that wrong. You wouldn't believe how many times I've recorded this and learnt this and got it wrong every time. So AE is the auto exposure lenses. These are the older ones. These have the Ninja Star bokeh, and they are denoted with a white last aperture number, 2216. The MM lenses are the multi-mode lenses. These are the newer ones. These don't have the Ninja Star bokeh, and these are denoted by a green last aperture number. That better be right. There was also a G or a J on the end. This is quite obvious. G, but the lenses were manufactured in Germany, and J were manufactured in Japan. Should be noted that all the Yashica ML lenses are MM style with no Ninja Star bokeh. So while maybe not up to Zeiss's unquestionably high standards, the Yashica ML lenses were undoubtedly a great set of lenses. They quickly gained a reputation for high build quality along with great optics. The Tomioka plant, while producing Zeiss under license, also benefited a lot from this situation. They had learned a lot from Zeiss. This is very apparent when we look at the external design of the lenses. They are mostly indistinguishable from their Zeiss counterpart. So to summarize, Zeiss taught the Tomioka plant owned by Yashica how to develop and build under license their Contax line of Zeiss T-Star lenses. Yashica then used what they had learned to produce their own far cheaper ML series lenses. The build quality of the ML is also really great. I would say up to a par with the Zeiss lenses. I have had maybe 25 MLs in my hands over the last couple of years, and all have had very smooth focus, quite a nice sort of dampened aperture rings, also very nice for filming at least. Seem to have all held up to the test of time and all looked new and great. I got lucky maybe, but they all looked really good. The rubberized focus ring on all of my copies looked perfect. As for the glass, none of mine have fungus, besides the 28, or scratches. None have scratches. I have two 35mm lenses. Both had a bit of a haze inside. It was weird, like it was inside the front element. And in both cases, I was able to remove the front locking ring, remove the front element, clean the little milky sort of haze that was behind the front element with some rubbing alcohol, put it back in, and they were perfect. I don't know if it's by all 35s, but the two that I had this problem. My 28 also has an issue. It has some obvious fungus around the edge. Haven't tried to fix it yet. These lenses, the 28 is probably the cheapest Yashica ML you can get. So when I see one for 30, 40 euros, I'll buy one and sell mine with fungus for 20. It doesn't affect the image at the moment, so I'm not too fussed about it. So why did I choose to build a Yashica ML lens set where there are so many great vintage lens sets out there? Nikkors, Takumas, Rokkors, so many. Well, the Contax Zeiss, I think we can all agree, is top of most people's list when it comes to adaptable lenses for cine use, especially as some are similar to or possibly identical in terms of optics to the very, very rare, very, very expensive Zeiss Super Speeds. So the Contax Zeiss are the budget super speeds. But now the Zeiss Contax line has started to increase quite dramatically in price over the last couple of years, and it's starting to slip out of reach for me at least. It's a €6,000 lens set. It's not really any longer a viable option for budget filmmaking, for me at least. So I thought what looks like the Zeiss lenses has similar optical design, similar build quality, and I landed on the Yashica MLs. The one downside to the Yashica line compared to others is the fact that there is no 85mm lens. I have no idea why. I've searched the internet long and hard everywhere. I've asked in forums. I can't understand why they never produced an 85. If anyone knows why, please drop a comment, let me know. I'm still really interested. Like I said, I've never found a result, never found an answer. As every other lens manufacturer has an 85, be it a 2.8, a 2, or even a 1.4. There's so many variants, but with Zeiss, with Yashica, there is nothing. I was going to substitute it with the Zeiss 85 2.8 sonar. It's not an interesting lens. It's not particularly fast for a 135. Also very expensive. The 1.4 planar is way too expensive for me for now, so I'm sticking with my Samyang 85 1.4. Actually not a bad lens, definitely has somewhat of a vintage vibe to it in its rendering of colors, and it fits nicely in with the set, so for now this is okay. Since I decided to produce this review, I've actually went out and bought a Contax Zeiss 50 1.4 to compare the optics, build quality, design with the Yashica 50 1.4. I was lucky enough to find this boxed, absolutely mint, in perfect packaging, in its original plastic wrapper inside for a very, very good price. After this review, this is going back in its box, it's going in my dry store, and it's going to sit there for 15 years. Well, hopefully I can sell it for 10 times what I paid for it, because you ain't making any money in the bank. So let's jump into this. I keep banging on about how similar the lenses look externally, the Yashica and the Contax Zeiss. So let's take a closer look. My Contax is a AE. So we have the Ninja Star bokeh. Let's leave that open for a sec. Let's check out the 1.7. Does not, interestingly, actually has quite rounded aperture blades. I'm not sure how well we can see that through there, but they are pretty round in contrast to the 1.4, which has very, very square blades. Yeah, so as you can see when they're inverted, very similar heights between all three. That's probably just not focused all the way. Let's do it all the way in, all the way in, all the way in. Same height, same rubbers. The Zeiss does have a rubberized aperture gear. The Yashicas do not. They also have stainless steel mounts. So does the Zeiss, but the Zeiss has a black painted or anodized or whatever that is. Now that's enough of a history lesson, which I'm sure most of you skipped over. That's fine. I personally would do exactly the same thing. I find it a little bit interesting. Maybe some of you enjoyed it too. Let's get on to business. Let's get down to why you came here. You want to know how these lenses perform. I'm not going to do any really scientific tests. For me, it's not what vintage lenses are about. It's the look and the feeling you get from them. So we're going to look at some characteristical elements instead, namely flare, contrast, and of course, bokeh. Of course, sharpness will also be monitored, but no focus charts here. Seeing as we're not comparing these lenses with anything in particular, I think the best way to conduct this sort of overview review is to run a series of tests on each lens as it's on the camera, starting with focal length comparison on a fixed tripod. We will then look at flaring, bokeh, contrast in the same scenario. Of course, going from 24 to 200mm, the scene will change dramatically, so I'm going to try and move my camera back as I change focal length to try and keep the scene kind of framed the same. Of course, at some point I will run out of house, so yeah, you'll see that on the 200mm shot. The test today has been carried out on my Zcam E2S6. It's a 35mm 6K camera, but we are recording today in 2.8K as outside of OpenGate, it gives me the widest field of view, and OpenGate's just way too much data to be crunched on my computer for a YouTube video. It is sat on top of my Sackler Flowtech 75 with active 6 head. We have also got a revolver clutch here doing my ISO, white balance, ND filter, usually aperture, not on these lenses. We're recording onto my Atmos Ninja via HDMI onto a SanDisk SSD in ProRes LT. So let's jump into it. So the 24 is tipping the scales at 367 grams. Let's get it on the Zcam. So we're starting with a field of view comparison, plus a 300% crop while stopping down to see the increase in sharpness. Now this scene I set up to show the bokeh and flaring. I'm going to go out to infinity and then back so you can see, that is close focus bokeh and infinity bokeh. By close focus, I'm going to stop down so you can see the shape of the bokeh balls. Then go wide open again. And pull back to focusing on the face. We're going to fire up my nice old projector and swing the lens around a little bit and check out the flaring. As you can see, the 24 has pretty horrific or spectacular flaring, depending on how you like your flares. For me, they're beautiful. This big orb floating around is amazing. Yeah, really nice looking lens. Next up, the 28mm, the cheapest lens in the set. She is fully modded and doing the scales over at 319 grams. Let's get it mounted. Check out the bokeh. So I messed one of these up a little bit. Close focus, quite small bokeh balls, but pretty nice. Nice bokeh balls, nice and round, cat's eye in the corner. Stopping down, of course, we get the 6-sided shape. That is normal for this lens set. Let's get the projector on. Check out the flaring on the 28. Much better flare handling than the 24, definitely. These sort of two ugly sort of spots floating around, but no big flares, no rainbows, no orbs. It is definitely, for the cheapest lens, is one of the better handling lenses when it comes to flares. So the 35, the legend as they call it, it's a pretty decent lens. This is the most expensive lens. I think I paid 150 for this one. She's also doing the scales at about 310 grams. Fully modded, very similar weight. Let's get her on the Z. As you can see at 2.8, the 300% crop is pretty sharp. Just gets better towards 5.6. Check out the bokeh. Infinity, pulling to close focus. Getting some nice big faint balls. Got a cat's eye in the corner. Six-sided like the rest. So let's check out the flaring. Pretty distinct loss of contrast and flaring. Quite well controlled. We have these sort of arcing rainbow kind of like solar flares coming out, which I think are really cool. Definitely something that the DU lens guys in Hong Kong have been aiming for, to create these big rainbow flares. I've been following their project closely. If you haven't seen it, check it out. There's a link up here. So the 51.4, probably the first lens of the set that people would pick up. You know, it's a nice fast aperture lens, 50mm, standard field of view. Pretty sharp, pretty nice, definitely a good starting point. She's weighing in at 385 grams. So let's get it mounted and have a look at that field of view. Quite significant field of view crop compared to the 35mm. As you can see at 1.4, it's pretty soft. As you can see, we get like a halo bokeh at infinity. But as soon as we come to close focus, we get amazing bokeh, slight ninja starring. I know I just said you don't get ninja stars, but slight ninja starring at f2. As you can see on the face, very soft. Very low contrast when you get some light into it. Big arcing, sort of double-sided rainbow flares coming off. Got some orbs, got some refraction. A whole mess of flare. If you like that kind of stuff, it's beautiful. If you hate it, then it's a very bad lens. I personally love it and think it's a fantastic lens. So there are two macro options in the Yashica mount, the 55 f4 and the 100 f4. I found a 55 for quite a good price online, I think maybe €100. Thought I'd snap it up. Weighing in at 371 grams, fully modded. Now I'm not doing a macro test with this lens, we're doing it the same format as the other ones. As you can see at f4, very, very sharp. Just gets better down to f8. Side bokeh is obviously an infinity and be similar to the other lenses. The close focus is going to be crazy because the front extends so far. The bokeh almost disappears into the subject. I will stop down. As you can see, 5-sided aperture. Unlike the other lenses with 6, this is 5-sided. Pull back to focus on the face. Tack sharp wide open at f4. Flaring is pretty well controlled. Loss of contrast for sure. Kind of a slight orb floating around like the 24mm, but nowhere near as pronounced. Overall, a pretty nice look. Nice and sort of hazy and decontrasted without overly obtrusive flares. The 135, the second cheapest lens in this set. I think I paid maybe €30 for this lens. The lenses start to increase in weight now a little bit, of course. They're getting longer focal lengths and thus more glass inside. This is modded at 468 grams. Okay, we're getting some serious crop now, like I said. Between the 50 and the 135, there is nothing. So as you can see at 2.8, it's quite soft. Gets pretty good by 5.6. Infinity focus gets some nice bokeh. The bokeh balls on the 135 at close focus are beautiful. No onion rings, no cat's eyeing. Slight ninja star on the stop down there. Again, six-sided. Very uniform balls. Even in the corners, stay pretty round. Beautiful. Let's get the projector on and see what the flaring's like. As you can see, some kind of green ghosting in the corners, which I think is quite nice. A slight orb flying around like the 24. Not too much of a lack of contrast. Overall quite pleasing. So the last lens in the set, the 200mm f4. Biggest and heaviest lens at 592 grams. Still quite compact size, as you can see. Also has a built-in lens hood that I can't use because I have a mount adapter on the end. At f4, as you can see, it's incredibly sharp. f6 just gets better. f8 can't really get better than f6, to be honest. Very, very sharp lens. Wide open, I was blown away for a 40-50 euro lens, just how sharp this was. Infinity bokeh is quite big and nice. Pull back, we got some spots, probably some dirt on my lens. Is that one moving? Is that a worm? What is that? Yeah, so it's a bit dirty, but as you can see, quite nice bokeh. Again, six-sided. As you can see in this lens, I'm outside on my terrace, shining the lens and the light all the way through. Let's check the flaring on this one. Quite well controlled. One of the better lenses, about on par with a 28, I'd say. Got some crazy like ghosting there where it shines through off axis. So that wraps up that test. Hope you enjoyed it. So as you can see from the tests, these are some pretty nice lenses. I would recommend these lenses to budget filmmakers who run EF mounts, who can't run FD because they don't want to pay crazy prices to have rehousing or mount changes and swaps. Of course, the Contax has a 42mm flange and the EF has a 44mm flange. So this gives us 2mm of adapter space to run a bunch of adapters across all the lenses and get them onto EF mounts. They have a really good classic vintage look, as you can see from the test shots. The flaring's amazing, the colors are really nice, contrast is pretty decent until you shine a light in it, but I kind of like that. And let's be honest, if we're going to go down the vintage lens route, we want to have vintage lenses. We don't want them to look too perfect. Sharpness is something that can always be de-sharpened afterwards, and it's something that I would require a lens to be, but not crazy sharp. The 51.4 is pretty soft, wide open when you pixel peep, but if you look at it from a whole scene on a 4K TV, it's plenty sharp enough. It gets this kind of hazing and glowing around it. Looks like you got a pro mist on almost. I hope you enjoyed the way we ran the test today. This is something I've been planning for a long time. I hope it came together well, and you all enjoyed it, and you enjoyed the history a little bit. I kind of had fun digging through that and finding out stuff. Become a bit of a Contax fan after that, to be honest, but also because the lenses are great. So if you enjoyed the review, stick around, look some more, and I'll see you in the next one.